Good morning. You're watching Daybreak on Bloomberg Quint Live, and I'm Alex Matthew. First, the headlines this morning. Asian stocks are trading positive this morning as trade tensions between the U.S. and China begin to ease. Former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee passed away in New Delhi at the age of 93. The Bharat Ratna awardee will be accorded a state funeral later today. Minutes of the Monetary Policy Committee indicated that global and local uncertainties led to the MPC voting for a neutral stance. A depreciating rupee is likely to swell India's oil import bill by another $26 billion this fiscal, according to government officials. And the flood situation in Kerala continues to remain grim. The death toll has risen to 94. The Met Department now expects heavy rains to continue for another 48 hours. Here's a quick update on the international markets now. U.S. stocks soared on Thursday, bringing the Dow Jones Industrial Average its biggest one-day gain in 4 months, as upbeat earnings reports and stabilizing commodities prices helped calm investors' fears about the global economy. There was also the possibility that the U.S. and China would return to the negotiating table. Abigail Doolittle of Bloomberg News wraps up all the action on Wall Street in this report.
Stocks rallied in Thursday's Wall Street session. The Dow climbed by almost 1.6% for its best day in about 4 months, more than 4 months. The S&P 500 traded higher by about 0.8%. The Nasdaq lagged, but still was up about 0.4%. So all of this represents a rebound from some of the selling action that we saw on Wednesday. Investors less worried about Turkey, trade tensions, and China, instead of focused on some solid earnings reports, including one from Walmart. Those shares up 9.3%, the best day of the year after Walmart put up a blowout quarter. They also boosted guidance. The grocery segment really helped out Walmart. Cisco, those shares up by nearly 3% on the day. They put up a solid quarter, beating estimates modestly, but they boosted the guidance in a big way, and all segments on fire. As for the financials, this was another top area for the S&P 500 and the major averages on the day. All of the big banks trading higher as yields climbed, really getting a boost, a tailwind, and the industrials higher as well. A bit of a bounce back for Caterpillar, Boeing, Deere, and other industrial names after some of the uncertainty related to Turkey, trade, and China did certainly abate. To the downside, though, JCPenney, those shares absolutely plunging. They put up a wider loss than expected. They also cut the guidance to a loss. A bit of a surprise there. After the bell, though, Nordstrom put up a very strong quarter, beating estimates, raising the full-year guide. Those shares soaring up more than 10% in post-market trading. And overall, Thursday's Wall Street session risk on, with stocks higher and Haven bonds lower. In New York, Abigail Doolittle, Bloomberg News.
All right, now U.S. and Chinese officials said the two nations will resume lower-level trade talks this month in hopes of resolving an escalating battle over tariffs that threatens to damage both the economies. At the invitation of the Trump administration, China's Vice Commerce Minister will lead a delegation traveling to the U.S. late this month to discuss economic and trade issues of mutual concern. Jody Schneider of Bloomberg News has more in this report.
And it's interesting that the Chinese foreign ministry, went ahead and announced that. They announced that this was going to occur later in August, and it will include as you noted, both sides are going to have a delegation that's going to be led in the U.S. by the Undersecretary of Treasury, and on the Chinese side, it will be from their ministry as well. So there are talks. They're going to be occurring, interestingly, as the U.S. is set to go ahead and put into effect another $16 billion in tariffs on $16 billion of goods. This will be a second round of tariffs. And of course, the Chinese have retaliated as well. And it's the first time they will be meeting in 2 months since a high-level delegation went to China from the U.S.
Now, obviously, Jody, this is having a nice impact on our markets. We're seeing the yuan move, the dollar plunge against the yuan, down by 0.7%. That's the biggest one-day move since the middle of July. You would say, though, that this is still a fairly junior group of ministers going. Is it too early, really, to think of major progress? The markets seem to have sort of grabbed this piece of information as being something perhaps a little bit more substantial.
Yeah, the markets may be, this may be a little bit too enthusiastic a response. We are, look at who's going. These are not cabinet secretaries like we saw before. We saw the Commerce Secretary, we saw the Treasury Secretary going to China, we saw the Chinese delegation in earlier talks being led by a vice premier. This is not that level, but it is progress. It is, again, we haven't seen this in 2 months. And again, we also have to remember that even when there have been talks in the past and there looked like there was progress, it doesn't always end up in a deal. In May, when you had those high-level delegations meeting, there was a deal, and then President Trump walked away from it just days later. So there's still a lot to be done before there would be an agreement, and then the question would be, would an agreement stick? So this is early days in these talks, but the fact that they are that the Chinese government is announcing this and they are sending a delegation is a sign that both sides at least want to start that process again.
All right, Jody Schneider there on the possibility of trade talks resuming between China and the United States, and that more or less sets the context and the picture for trade to start in Asia this morning and the setup for trade in Asia this morning. We're joined live by David English from the Hong Kong studio. David, well, all the equity markets in Asia seemingly carrying on from that US session. We are likely to end the week on a high, but at least back home here, everyone's looking at the currency. It breached that all-time high yesterday once more.
Yeah, I mean, I think how we fold what's happening in your currency market there, at least with the rupee, into I guess what's happening with everything else across EMs is that we heard from Jody and Manus. They were just talking about the latest story here is that the two sides have agreed to at least talk and explore. Now there's no guarantee that something will happen, but it really speaks to, and you look at the price action since that time, you mentioned it, into today, it speaks to how far on edge some of these positions were. That even the hint of something that something might happen is actually leading to, at least when you look at the currency and the Chinese renminbi, some of the short positions really getting squeezed out. Short positions getting closed yesterday. We're seeing that a little bit as well as we speak right now with this, again, a lower fixing on dollar China from the PBOC. There is that. There's also the fact that the valuations really in emerging market equities have gotten so low that it's almost as if some of these markets are not even priced for any sort of earnings growth. So I'm sure you guys have heard and you've been told that when you look at these valuations, it does make a compelling case for dollar investors, long-term dollar investors. So we are seeing a little bit of that. Is this going to be sustained? When you look at some of these charts, it doesn't seem we're forming any sort of upward momentum just yet. In fact, we are poised for a positive end to the week, but on a weekly basis, it's still the biggest drop here for Asian equities, emerging markets as well, going back to that sell-off back at the start of the year. So I guess I don't mean to sort of wrap up this report on a down note, but certainly we sort of have to keep our expectations paired a little bit. We've seen this before. We've seen this the past several weeks or so. A little bit of hope, a little bit of bid, but again, stronger dollar, that has to go away, is what we're told, for us to really see anything sustainable come out of Asia ex-Japan.
Absolutely, David. I think that sets the context perfectly for the end of the week here in India as well. Thanks so much for that. But let's set you up for the day's trade in India. Somit Sarkar is joining us now to give you the trade setup for the day and also to tell you what's happening in the futures and options space. Somit, well, what's on your list today?
So if you take cues from the global market, the Indian market also are expected to open in green today. Now if you see the SGX Nifty, it is up around 16.5 points, which assures a positive start for the Indian market. And if you see the ADR picture now, the Dr. Reddy, Tata Motors, ICICI Bank, Infosys all up in the range of around 1 to 3.5%, while HDFC Bank and Wipro is the only ADR to be down close to 1.6%, while all the other ADR stocks are up in trade today. Now if you see on the sectoral side, yesterday we closed down because of the weakness and the trade wars and because of weaker rupee that we saw yesterday. Nifty mid cap and Nifty small cap all were down in the range of 0.9 to 0.6%. And if you see on the major indices, bank and PSU bank indices were down close to 0.7 and 0.8%. Punjab National Bank was the only gainer on that part. Now if you see On the sectoral side, the Nifty Pharma Index was the only sectoral gain on the back of a weaker rupee, while on the loser side, it was the Nifty Metal Index, which lost close to 3% yesterday in trade, and that is because of the trade tensions going on. Now, on the flow side, if you see, FIs were the net sellers in the market. They sold close to 825 crore, while the DIs were the buyers, and they bought close to 134 crore rupees. And on the contribution side, if you see, Infosys, Sun Pharma, GAIL, ICICI Bank contributed the most, while on the loser side, it was mainly the banks, private banks that lost the most in the market. HDFC, Kotak Mahindra Bank, HDFC Bank, Reliance Industries also lost close to 8 points yesterday in trade. And if you see now on the FNO side, in the ban, Adani Enterprises, Adani Power and Jet Airways continue to remain in the ban. Well, the new entrant in the ban is Jain Irrigation. The stock was down close to 10% yesterday. PNB is out of the ban, and as it was up yesterday and close to 2%, and we have seen some short covering in the stock, and so it's up close to 2% in trade yesterday.
All right, thanks so much for that, Somit. Let's also take a check on the rupee and the bond market and see what happened in yesterday's session. The rupee slid to an all-time low against the dollar on Thursday as the US currency continued to relentlessly strengthen against all major currencies, and also India's widening trade deficit dampened sentiment. Now, the Indian currency has lost 10.5% this year so far against the backdrop of India's ballooning fiscal deficit and surging crude prices, and also mounting worries surrounding the US-China trade conflict. The 10-year benchmark bond meanwhile yield also dropped sharply to end the session at 7.86%. Now, 5 of India's 6 Monetary Policy Committee members voted for a rate hike in the policy review meeting earlier this month, but most believed that prevailing global and local uncertainties justified a neutral stance. This is according to the minutes of the August meet that were released on Thursday. Now, Shraddha Babla is joining us with the stocks in news. Shraddha, what are the stocks that are likely to move on account of being in the news today?
So, Alex, at the top of my list is Iron Exchange. They have won an EPC contract worth about 439 crores, so that's one to watch out for. Lemon Tree Hotels has signed an agreement for a 90-room property at Vijayawada in Andhra Pradesh. This is their second property there. The hotel is expected to be operational in about 2 years, so by June 2020. Persistent Systems has partnered with Three-Phase Electric to develop IoT solutions. Then you also have Gati, which has clarified that all cargo logistics buyout plan has not yet been finalized and that the management is evaluating various options. So focus will continue to remain on this stock. Cosmo Films has launched CPP metallized film for laminate structures. Let's see how that one reacts. And finally, AstraZeneca Pharma, which has received an approval from the Indian Drug Controller to market cancer drug Linparza. So that's another stock to watch out for, Alex.
All right, thanks so much for that, Shraddha. Now, Godrej Consumer plans to generate sales of 200 crore rupees in the next 2 years with the launch of its powder to liquid hand wash Protect Mr. Magic. Charlene D'Souza caught up with the CEO for India, Sunil Kataria, at the launch to discuss the company's strategy with the new product and more. Here's a slice of that conversation.
The category of liquid hand washing in India is around 750 to 800 odd crores. And it's after being in the market for around 10 years, these products. Liquid hand wash is doing, I think, a very noble cause in India. That these products are promoting hand washing habit in India, which is also part of the government's agenda of Swachh Bharat. But the challenges which really come and why this category is still, while growing reasonably, but still only 800 crores is, these products are expensive. One liquid hand wash unit comes at around 2 to 3 times the price of a soap. And India requires affordability. It's also not easy to distribute bottles of liquid hand washes, hence accessibility is also a challenge. So when we looked at it, we said the category size and potential is not 800 crores. Actually, why can't every home which has a soap not also have a liquid hand wash? And why shouldn't people start using liquid hand wash in every home of India? For that, we said this can't happen through liquid hand washes the way they exist today. We'll have to reimagine it, we have to disrupt it. And hence the format which took shape is powder, which gets sold as a powder in a sachet. With your own tap water and a pump bottle, it gets converted into a liquid hand wash.
So do you expect the growth rate of the category to increase, and by how much with this product, and where do you see your market share?
Yes, okay, growth of categories are difficult to predict, but very clearly if the category is growing at around broadly around 15%, we believe this is a disruption which is going to happen. And disruption means difficult to predict, but this category should grow at 30, 40, 45%, in that sense. Because then the trajectory, because the category is no longer about liquid hand washes. This category is about powders which get converted into liquid hand washes. The category is no longer about a 45, 50 rupee bottle. The category is about a 15 rupee sachet. And that's what I expect, that the category growth should be actually 45, 50% every year. And we being the pioneers and the inventors of this almost a global innovation, I would expect us to take a lion's share of it. I expect this brand, my ambition would be becoming a 200 odd crores in 2 years and maybe a 500 odd crore brand in 4 odd years time.
And if you could also tell us on your distribution base, because considering the price point, this is definitely a product which is aiming at rural markets. Rural markets has been performing well. That's what everybody, all FMCG companies have said. But do we see a change in consumption? Are we seeing, smaller packages, consumption in smaller packages picking up?
So you're talking rural in general. Yeah. But before that, I'll say this product itself, in this product first, the target is both urban and rural. In fact, in urban India, with this 800 crore market size only, the penetration of liquid hand wash is only 20% even in urban India. So there's huge headroom for us to get urban India to start taking to liquid hand washes through this format. And at the same time, rural India doesn't even understand liquid hand washing really in that sense. So I think the product, the message is very clearly for us that we'll first disrupt the urban, but at the same time, there's a huge potential to create markets in rural itself. Separately, your question that what's happening in rural.
Could you also tell us what your distribution will be like for this product?
So, okay. Now, one very interesting dynamics of Indian FMCG distribution is that a product reaches far if, apart from demand generation, if it's easily portable, if it's easily reachable, because India is a multi-layered, complex distribution network, and a powder sachet is any day much more easily distributable, priced at $15 than a liquid hand wash bottle. So I expect this to actually start reaching, distribution outlets. See, today the category itself is very small in distribution. It roughly reaches just around 8 lakh odd outlets, while soaps reach 80 lakhs outlets. That's the difference. I would say that actually this disruption should help the category itself double its distribution over the next 3 years or so.
All right, just 10 years ago, they were the poster boys of India's booming pharmaceutical industry. Fame peaked for Malvinder Mohan Singh and Shivinder Mohan Singh in 2008 when they sold their stake in generic drug maker Ranbaxy to Japan's Daiichi Sankyo for a whopping $2.4 billion. It's only gone downhill from there. Bloomberg's Ari Alstetter has this special report.
How did India's billionaire Singh brothers lose their fortune? Their spiritual guru played an unlikely role. I'm Ari Alstetter for Bloomberg News. This spiritual commune in North India is the headquarters of the Radha Swami Satsang Beas. It's home to the master, Gurinder Singh Dhillon. 4 million people worldwide look to him as their spiritual guide, but to the Singh brothers, he's more. He became a surrogate father after their own died. They financed a real estate business in his family's names. My reporting shows that contributed to their downfall. But no one at the commune knew about that. The place looks like a U.S. suburb, except 500,000 people come at a time when the master gives a teaching. The 8,000 people who live here run the hostels where they sleep and the kitchens that feed them. Those kitchens can turn out 80,000 chapati in an hour, 2,400 liters of lentil curry, and 5,000 liters of tea. Everyone here has to be able to support themselves financially, including the master.
All right, Soumit Sarkar is now joining us back with the big brokerage calls of the day. Soumit, what are the brokerages saying today?
So on the big brokerage calls for the day, Alex, first we have is UBS on DLF. Now the brokerage has raised the rating on the stock to buy from neutral and has also hiked the target price to 300 rupees from 235. Now according to the brokerage, the DLF has seen a significant debt reduction in financial year 2018. Now along with this, the development business of the company is also expected to be largely self-funding, even with the build-sell model. Now despite this debt reduction, which has led into a stronger balance sheet for DLF, aggressive and a largely self-funded development business. The stock performance shows that this positives are still not priced in, and on the back of this, the brokerage has raised its rating and also the target price on the stock. Lastly, the brokerage says that the accounting rule change will drive a big jump in the company's revenue and earnings in financial year 2019 and also in financial year 2020. Second, we have is Ambit on Hathway Cable. Now, the brokerage has maintained its buy rating on the stock with a target price of 30 rupees. Now, the first quarter results of the company were impacted because of the subscriber cleanup act taken up by the company. However, on the cost front, according to the brokerage, the cost management was stellar from Hathway Cable. Now, the Q1 results of Hathway Cable indicate that the company is aggressively preparing for Jio's entry in the fixed line broadband space by rationalizing its cost and bundling freebies for higher ARPU customers only. Now, they did not offer any freebies to customers who are using less than 20 GB data per month, and that's the reason there was a reduction in the subscriber end, which resulted into a weak quarter in the first quarter of financial year 2019. Lastly, the brokerage also believes that the company's last mile connectivity is a key strategic asset for Hathway Cable, which is not possible for any other operator to get.
Thanks so much for that, Somit. Now, there are several stories that you'll find if you log on to the website bloombergquint.com. There's also the live market action over the course of the day. But if you do log on now, here are just a couple of stories that you will find. IDBI Bank is looking to complete the transfer of majority ownership from the government to Life Insurance Corporation of India within the next 3 months, according to B. Sriram, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the bank. Now, you'll also find the entire interview that Bloomberg Quint had with the MD and CEO of IDBI Bank on the website. Maruti Suzuki India has hiked the prices of its vehicles by up to 6,100 rupees to partially offset an increase in commodity and distribution costs and adverse foreign exchange rates. The company said this in a statement. And 3 months after the Mental Health Care Act of 2017 came into force, the Indian insurance regulator has notified insurers to cover medical treatment for mental illnesses. Now, when you think of satellites in outer space, you think rockets. But these two Russian cosmonauts, which are essentially astronauts, flung 4 satellites into outer space, into orbit, with their hands. Here's how.
The first China-U.S. satellite floating away following its deployment.
The hook is off. I've removed it. Sergey, copy.
And the first China-U.S. satellite has been deployed manually by Prokopiev at 11:43 a.m. Central Time as the station flew over Naperville, Illinois.
Please check the position of the handle.
The cargo craft.
Second hook is latched on cables and reconnect the cables there. Okay, I understand.
India's first non-Congress Prime Minister to complete a full term in office, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, passed away last evening after prolonged illness. Vajpayee was Prime Minister for 3 terms between 1996 and 2004. He was also conferred upon India's highest civilian honour, the Bharat Ratna, in 2015. Here's a look at the leader's life in numbers.
कदम मिलाकर चलना होगा, बाधाएं आती है आए, घृणय प्रलय की घोर घटाए, पांवों के नीचे अंगारे, सर पर बरसे यदि ज्वालाएं, निज हाथों से हंसते हंसते आग लगाकर चलना होगा, कदम मिलाकर चलना होगा। घृणय प्रलय की घोर घटाएं, पांवों के नीचे अंगारे, सर पर बरसे यदि ज्वालाएं, निज हाथों से हंसते हंसते आग लगाकर चलना होगा, कदम मिलाकर हास्य रुदन में, तूफानों में, अमर असंख्यक बलिदानों में, उद्यानों में, वीरानों में, अपमानों में, सम्मानों में, उन्नत मस्तक, उभरा सीना, पीड़ाओं में पलना होगा, कदम मिलाकर चलना होगा। उजियारे में, अंधकार में, कलकछार में, बीच धार में, घोर घड़ा में, भूत प्यार में, क्षणिक जीत में, दीर्घ हार में, जीवन के शत शत आकर्षक अरमानों को दलना होगा, कदम मिलाकर चलना होगा। सम्मुख फैला अमर ध्येय पथ, प्रगति विगत चिरंतन कैसी इतियत, सुस्मित हर्षित कैसे श्रमश्रत, असफल सफल समान मनोरथ, सब कुछ देकर कुछ न मांगते, पावस बनकर ढलना होगा, कदम मिलाकर चलना होगा, कदम मिलाकर चलना होगा, कदम मिलाकर चलना होगा।
Poet, statesman and leader, he will be remembered. On that note, that's all we have for you on this edition of Daybreak. But up next on Bloomberg Quint is all you need to know.